Welcome to this special edition of Hannity, The Trump Agenda. I'm Jeanine Pirro, in tonight for Sean. President Trump just moments ago wrapped up a speaking engagement at the rally for Luther Strange in Huntsville, Alabama. At the rally, President Trump explained why he's supporting Strange in the primary runoff election taking place on Tuesday. During that rally, President Trump touched on a number of big issues, including putting America first. Take a look.
I will always defend America's interest above all else. I'm here for you. I'm not here for global interest. We're not here for the rest of the globe. And we want to treat the rest of the globe right. And, you know, when I say America first, everyone's saying, gee. And I never liked it from the standpoint that if you're in another country, you want your country to be first by the leader, right? So nobody really understood. For years they've said America first, although I'm the one that really means it. There's a big difference.
President Trump also explained how the border wall is coming and soon. Here's what he said about that.
By the way, the wall is happening, folks, okay? Believe me. The wall is happening. So you need to have a great wall, but it has to be see-through. We are now looking at samples. We have 4 samples that have already been built, General, right? They've been built. And we're looking at different samples already of see-through walls. We are going to have as much wall as we need. You don't need it all the way. You know, you have 2,000 miles. You don't need it because you have a lot of natural barriers, etc. Somebody said, well, what are you going to do? You're going to build that wall in the middle of the river? Are you going to, that nobody can go in? Are you going to build that wall on the mountain? I said, you don't need the wall on the mountain. You have a mountain, which is a wall. But we're going to build the wall. It's coming along great.
Another topic the president focused on tonight was the GOP failing to repeal Obamacare.
With Obamacare, I've been listening for 7 years. As many of these people, now Richard kept voting against it, but many of these people kept saying, repeal and replace, repeal and replace. Then they finally have, now they didn't care, nobody cared because they had a president that was the Senate, so it didn't matter. So it didn't take much courage. So they were getting all these great votes, you know, like, I think they voted, what, 61 times? Like 61 times to repeal and replace. They finally get a president who will sign the legislation, and they don't have the guts to vote for it, okay? They don't have the guts to vote for it.
The president also spoke about how he wants to get tax reform done immediately.
We're moving quickly to pass a massive tax cut and simplification for the middle class. We want new tax returns. We want simplification. We want reform. And you know what we really want? We want massive tax cuts. That's what we're doing for business. That's what we're doing for the middle class. If we want to restore American prosperity, we need tax reform that is pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-worker, pro-family, and pro-American.
And North Korea's dictator Kim Jong-un got a warning from the president.
We can't have madmen out there shooting rockets all over the place. Rocket Man should have been handled a long time ago. He should have been handled a long time ago by Clinton. I won't mention the Republicans, right? By Obama. Why did this, you know, this is a different time. This should have been handled 8 years ago and 4 years ago. And honestly, and 15 years ago and 20 years ago and 25 years ago. This shouldn't be handled now, but I'm going to handle it. Little Rocket Man. We're going to do it. Because we really have no choice. He may be smart, he may be strategic, and he may be totally crazy. But you know what? No matter what he is, we're going to handle it, folks. Believe me.
And joining us now with reaction on the president's remarks is Salem nationally syndicated radio host Larry Elder, America First Action PAC spokesman and senior advisor, former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark, and American Conservative Union Chair Matt Schlapp. All right, good evening, gentlemen. Matt, I'm going to go to you first. Why get involved in a primary election?
Yeah, you know, Judge, I was the political director for President Bush, and you should be very careful about weighing into these primary fights, because what's interesting in Alabama is most of the people you would consider the Trump voters are aligned with Judge Moore. But yet here you have Donald Trump coming in and endorsing Luther Strange, who quite honestly has been a very reliable vote for the Trump agenda. So it's a very tricky situation. And I tell you, Tuesday, I can't predict what's going to happen.
All right. David Clark, I mean, did the president make a good argument for voting for Luther over Judge Roy Moore?
Well, I think he's going to win either way here. I think whatever happens on Tuesday.
Wait a minute. You think, hold on, David. You think that Luther Strange is going to win because he's the underdog right now?
No, I'm not calling out who's going to win. I said that the president will win either way. With whoever wins on Tuesday, I think there'll be a reliable Trump agenda supporter. So, this is the politics of primary. You can get a little sticky at times and get a little uncomfortable, but the president's going to come out a winner either way, no matter who wins the primary.
But did the president make a good argument, David, for supporting or having people vote for Luther Strange over Roy Moore?
Sure he did, because basically what he did, what I heard, is he blasted the GOP as a body. Look, the Congress as a body is dysfunctional. Trying to get them to work on anything together is like trying to herd cats. So what he's trying to do really is mobilize and energize the people, the public, all across America to start to put the pressure on the GOP to get his agenda passed and to get it underway. And right now, it seems to be stuck in neutral because of this dysfunctional Congress. And basically, the GOP's in charge, so it falls in their lap.
All right. Larry, what do you think about this? I mean, about the president getting involved in this primary race. And, when you think about it, I mean, he's got a lot on the line. If Luther wins, it's good for him. He came in, saved the underdog, and he goes back to, the legislature, a strong person. If Luther doesn't win, he goes back looking to get looking to get both health care and tax reform, looking weak.
Well, I was surprised he got involved in this race, too. Huntsville, Alabama is my mom's hometown, so I was pleased to see him. But I was surprised he got involved in this race. If he doesn't win, he loses prestige. People are going to think that it's okay to defy Trump. On the other hand, if he pulls this out and Luther Strange is the underdog, it suggests that the president has a lot more clout than people think. Look, his poll numbers are up. He comes off this Bothell United Nations speech. He still hasn't back down from all of his promises, including the wall. So this gave him an extraordinary opportunity to restate his presidency and to talk about what he wants to do in the future. This is not a guy who's afraid of getting impeached, I'll tell you that.
Well, when we talk about him as an establishment candidate, this Luther Strange, Mitch McConnell's PAC, Matt, gave him $9 million.
Yeah, and this is becoming an increasing problem. I think it's one of the reasons why Luther Strange has struggled so badly. Judge, it's going to come as no surprise to you that if you're a candidate running out there in America and you are tied to the GOP Washington establishment, it is not a positive. And I'm surprised that PAC spent that money directly in the race. I think it's one of the impacts. I think Luther Strange is having trouble making the case that he is his own man, something that Judge Moore has demonstrated throughout his career. I tell you, the one thing I give for the president here, Judge, is he's rewarding his friend, and Luther Strange has been a reliable vote for him. But right. He is right to take on this Congress. 7.5 years of talking about Obamacare and watching these senators weasel out of it. I think people across this country, it's pitchfork time. Well,
it is. When you have the Oval and the Senate and Congress, David Clark, I mean, to not get anything done, to me, is a signal that the establishment is looking to get rid of Donald Trump. They are not looking to support him.
Well, look, that's precisely what's happening right now. There are people who are two-faced about this. I'm talking about the GOP. We know where the Dems stand on this thing, but within the GOP and in public, they might talk about how they're for tax reform, a market-based health care system, infrastructure rebuilding, law and order, and those sorts of things. But they're really not inside. They're really not pushing. And that's what the president needs. He needs people to help push this agenda through the Congress, and they're just not providing the heavy lifting that they need to do.
Right.
All right. You know what, Larry Elder, I want to move on a little bit about the speech. What did you think of the new title, Little Rocket Man?
I was going to say, Judge, Kim Jong-un has been demoted. He used to be Rocket Man. Now he's Little Rocket Man.
Yeah.
Look, other national leaders have referred to him as Rocket Man. Donald Trump says, and all of a sudden, Donald Trump's a warmonger. There was a cover story in The Economist, which is a British newspaper, 2006, with Kim Jong-un on it, calling him Rocket Man. Nobody said anything. Donald Trump says it. Now all of a sudden, he's irresponsible and he's a warmonger. Double standard. It's just that Donald Trump derangement syndrome that we've been talking about ever since he became president.
He can't do anything right. But I'll tell you what, Matt, what I think he did right was give an incredibly strong speech at the UN, letting everyone know, you know what, it's okay if you want to support your country, I'm going to support mine. Not to the detriment of yours unless you're coming out to hurt me. I mean, I thought the speech was phenomenal.
He explained it so well. What was great about it for Donald Trump, he's so good at communicating in quick little bursts, but he actually gave us a philosophical understanding of what it means to stand up for a sovereign country, what sovereignty means. And he also talked about why communism and socialism continues to fail around the globe. And let me tell you, Judge, when he takes on Cuba and North Korea and Iran, I'm going to stand up and cheer every time.
Well, Cuba, North Korea, Iran, and David Venezuela as well, saying, you know, it wasn't a problem, and I don't have the quote exactly right, it wasn't a problem with socialism or the implementation. It's just a problem with socialism.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, what he said, words to the effect that it was implemented properly, socialism, and that is the problem. It was a fantastic speech, and every time he gets on the world stage like that, he did it when he was over in Warsaw, I hear people, even who might not care about him, say it's one of the best speeches they ever heard because he's a great communicator. But I was real pleased to see him stand up in that well at the UN and proudly talk about what America has accomplished, what America's about, that we're here to work with people that want to work with us, and it's a two-way street. But I'll tell you what, every time he gets on that world stage, the leadership that this guy exhibits, and I say that affectionately, the President of the United States, it's astounding. But now we have America that's going to be front and center in terms of working with the world, but again, America comes first. I like that.
All right, Larry Elder, finally, in terms of tax reform, health care, what do you think is going to happen this week?
Well, as you heard it from the speech, Trump hasn't given up. And I thought I heard some implied pressure on the Republican senator from Alaska who voted against the last repeal replacement bill, who hasn't decided yet. He's already written off Donald Trump, so he hasn't given up. And by the way, Judge, did you notice the tie matched his background, the white and red stripes, and the white and red stripes in the background? Yeah. You think that was a coincidence? I don't think so.
I don't know. All I know is that the president he's brilliant. He's a showman. He gets it. He gets it on so many levels. But it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the next week or two.
Agreed.
Big impact on 2018. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen, for being with us tonight. And coming up, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, John Bolton, is here to talk about the latest example of North Korean aggression. That and more as a special edition of Hannity, The Trump Agenda continues.
Now he's talking about a massive weapon exploding over the ocean, Pacific Ocean, which causes tremendous calamity. Where that plume goes, so goes cancer, so goes tremendous problems. And I want to tell you something, and I'm sure he's listening because he watches every word, and I guarantee you one thing, he's watching us like he never watched anybody before. That I can tell you. And maybe something gets worked out, and maybe it doesn't. Personally, I'm not sure that it will. I can tell you one thing, you are protected, okay? You are protected. Nobody's going to mess with our people.
Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. That was President Trump earlier tonight at a rally in Alabama, again warning North Korea against further provocation. Earlier today, President tweeted, quote, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, who is obviously a madman who doesn't mind starving or killing his people, will be tested like never before. This comes after the rogue dictator called President Trump deranged and threatened to test a hydrogen bomb in the Pacific. Joining us with reaction is former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Fox News contributor John Bolton. Good evening, Ambassador.
Glad to be with you.
Thank you. The threat of a hydrogen bomb, I mean, which apparently is far more sophisticated than the atomic bombs of past, is pretty serious. I mean, does Kim Jong-un have the capacity, the capability to do that?
Well, we don't know, but he certainly, by most expert opinions, in his 6th nuclear test, did detonate a thermonuclear weapon. Some think perhaps his 4th test was also thermonuclear, and he's shown he's got the range for his ballistic missiles. Now, the president is correct when he says that one of the dangers from a thermonuclear blast over the Pacific is the radiation that would come from it. A lot of the experts are now also worrying about whether there's a potential EMP effect from it, electromagnetic pulse. Depends on where the device is detonated. Would it take out satellites in orbit? If it were lower, could it take out electrical grids and communication systems in land areas near where the detonation takes place? So this is more serious than just setting off a big firecracker. And I think it shows fundamentally why the president is properly concerned about how irrational this regime is. You know, wars can start not simply because people intend they start, but through miscalculation. And you see a dictatorship like this, miscalculation should be much on our mind.
Well, you know, earlier I read that what Kim Jong-un did with regard to that ICBM that was headed toward Japan, because, you know, his alignments are not that specific. It could just as easily have hit Japan. And the concern is if it's not that sophisticated, the targeting, then everyone is in trouble.
Well, we don't really have that good an idea how sophisticated the capabilities are. Everybody, I think, has been surprised in the past 3-4 months at the range of some of the missiles launched and frankly, at the thermonuclear detonation in the 6th test. But what's troubled me is that in these 2 launches you mentioned that have overflown Japanese territory, there was no effort by them or by us to engage with missile defense systems. Now, our response to that is, well, we didn't think it threatened Japanese territory. But as you rightly point out, these weapons can fail, their trajectory can go off. Or the North Koreans might actually be more sophisticated and have maneuverable capabilities for their missiles. So I think this is very dangerous, and I think the president's trying to alert us. He certainly tried to alert the rest of the world on Tuesday that he's not going to allow this kind of dictatorship, or I would say Iran, to extort the American people through the threat of the use of nuclear weapons.
You know, the president yesterday signed that, I believe it was yesterday, signed the executive order where he increased the Treasury Department's ability to sanction those who are doing business with North Korea. And the curious thing is that China came along. What do you think brought China along, where they're saying their central bank cannot deal with anyone who's working with North Korea?
Well, it's potentially quite a significant step. I think the president's sanctions, although they don't use the words China and Russia, everybody should understand that's who they're aimed at. So we'll see if China follows through. Part of our problem for 25 years, and I think the president, again, was right to say this is a 25-year-long failure that he's now inherited. China will say one thing and do another. If, in fact, China has made a significant move here, it will have a tremendous impact on North Korea. China really supplies 90% of North Korea's energy. It is its financial lifeline to the outside world. And they haven't applied pressure in the past because they're worried the regime will collapse. Maybe their attitude's changing.
Well, and if indeed, you know, Kim Jong-un does make a decision to try to do something, I mean, I believe the president when he says, you know, you're covered, we've got your back. The president will be able, with our military and the sophisticated technology we have, to prevent that kind of thing from happening if he were to try to attack with an ICBM, correct?
Well, let's be honest, though. Our missile defenses are not what they ought to be after 8 years of Barack Obama slashing the Bush administration's missile defense plan. We don't have what are called layered missile defenses. We don't have the sort of capabilities that were envisioned where we could try and take out missiles in the boost phase, in the mid-course, or in the terminal phase. So I think really there's no doubt that if a North Korean missile landed on Guam or, God forbid, on the continental United States, that we would do what the president said and destroy North Korea. Colin Powell used to call that turning North Korea into a charcoal briquette.
Right.
The question is whether we strike first to prevent that kind of tragedy from happening, and that decision, I think, is still up in the air.
Well, clearly it's preemptive, but then the question is it preemptive based on the fact that we were about to be hit? And that clearly is the issue. But one more question. You mentioned the electric grid. If they were to put an EMP or some kind of nuclear device on a satellite in the southern hemisphere, we are vulnerable.
Yeah, and look, let's be clear. This is an act of war. The fact that it takes out, let's just say, electrical grids or communication systems, it may not kill people immediately, but it's still an act of war because the knock-on effect of it could well be disruption of air traffic control systems, tragedies that happen when electricity goes out. We just simply, in my view, cannot tolerate leaving North Korea with a nuclear weapons capability. And by the way, that's exactly what the president said to the UN on Tuesday.
Yep, so we did. All right, Ambassador, thanks.